women have gathered in their thousands with allies today to say no more. They've gathered to demand an end to the killing of women in this country. You look at the multiple stories that we have all covered over the years of young women, women of all ages, children even, who have been killed, mainly by men in the country. And today they're hoping, the women, that their action will ultimately spur action from the leaders of the world, including our own President Cyril Ramaphosa. Someone who was out and about today watching one of those demonstrations is SABC News senior reporter Chriselda Lewis. And Chriselda is with me here, in fact, at the Nasrec Expo Center. Chriselda, let's talk about the overarching message of these women who are out on the streets today, and why now? Why did they decide to use this day to make their point?
Let me start off by saying, Temekile, it was quite gut-wrenching to listen to the names of those women being called. Your Annie Dewanis, your Reva Steenkamps, and many others who have died as a result of the scourge of gender-based violence. So there's activists basically around the country today in various locations. Where I was based at the Constitutional Hill, quite a significant spot if you look at its symbolism for the struggle in South Africa, you know, against apartheid, and what Constitution Hill symbolizes. It was important for them to take it there, because the struggle for today, these activists say, is the scourge of gender-based violence, which they want these leaders that are gathered here in South Africa, the G20 leaders, minus one, of course, minus the United States of America. They want, amongst the many global issues that they will be discussing, is to put gender-based violence at the top of that list. It's not just a South African scourge, it's a worldwide scourge. Hence today what we saw was a culmination or coming together of many women from across the world. Many of them, some of them who'd flown in for the G20, decided to join that protest. And it was not just a protest at Constitution Hill, it was a protest around the country. 15 minutes of complete silence of power, they say. That silence symbolizing women who've been killed as a result of gender-based violence.
And let's describe that moment, Chriselda, and perhaps we can even speak to the experience of being a woman in this country with our alarming GBV stats, what it was like to be in a crowd of women who are so tired, but also so afraid because of what's going on in the country, but ultimately still determined to take back their power.
There's a hope from the sense that I got, Temekile, that it won't just be another protest. We've seen many protests, such protests before. And the 16 days of no violence against women and children is coming up. That's 16 days where we remember that we shouldn't be beating up and killing women and children. In fact, it's a conversation that needs to be had 365 days of the year. That is the sentiment that I heard many of those women stand there and talk about. Young girls talk about how we're afraid of our fathers, how we're afraid of our uncles, how when we walk in the street, you have to turn your back. And it's a blessing to arrive home safe. So what kind of country then are you living in where these activists say, all those that were gathered there say, it is time, not just in South Africa, for policy, for the laws to be much harsher on perpetrators of gender-based violence. That message is what echoed, not just where I was reporting from where other SABC News reporters were reporting from as well. So it was quite gut-wrenching. That complete silence, as I indicated, Temekile, complete silence for 50. There were pregnant women who were lying on the floor. That was one picture that we captured of a pregnant woman who says, I want to bring this child into a South Africa that is much safer. That's why she decided to be there. And she joined hundreds of other women. But most importantly, it's a conversation that like the activists say, that should be also had with men. Men were also there. Men who stood in solidarity with women and said, we won't be part of the scourge. We want to be part of a solution. We want to be a part of a solution to go out and speak to men and say, this is not okay.
Right.
Women cannot live in a country where they feel unsafe.
And that is so important, because men, as the main perpetrators of violence against women and children,
you can't exclude them from the conversation.
Have to be there, right?
You cannot exclude them from the conversation. And that was actually one of the striking messages from one of the gender-based violence survivors. Her name was Vanessa. When I spoke to her, she said to me, Chriselda, we cannot have this conversation without men. And that's why it was important, she says. She was quite happy that there were men who came and joined in that march and hoped that those few voices that were seen or faces that were seen there would be part of the message that goes beyond Constitution Hill and echoes around the country to say enough is enough, essentially.
And President Ramaphosa spoke about the scourge of gender-based violence and femicide yesterday, a declaration that indicates that there'll be some seriousness in the response, but the time is now. Ultimately, people want action tonight.
Absolutely. How many conversations have been had, Thembekile? How many gender-based violence marches have I not covered? What is different about this one? So these activists are hoping that this symbolic moment in South Africa, the moment that the world has its eyes on the country, something could be said about it. I mean, on the sidelines of the G20 summit, which of course starts tomorrow, these conversations need to be had. And the hope from these activists, like I said, is that this conversation is going to be high on the agenda, in addition to the many global challenges and issues, that are being faced. So what's going to be different about this one? Will anything change? Yes, the president said indeed it is a crisis, but these activists believe that in order to change, if anything is going to be changed, you need to be harsher towards perpetrators of gender-based violence. It cannot just be another talk shop over and over again.
And I'm hoping we'll bring up those pictures again for people who in fact are just coming home, who are unable to participate, so they can get a sense of just the groundswell of support. I mean, I saw a video from Gqeberha, people gathered. In the Free State, there were people out in the streets as well. So this is a national emergency for all intents and purposes.
No, absolutely, Thembekile. And I think not just South Africa. Every single nation that is beset by this particular scourge should honestly be taking it seriously. And what is important around the messaging of this, Thembekile, is that these activists are saying there cannot be real development, there cannot be real progress, there cannot be real growth without tackling issues, serious concerns, a scourge like gender-based violence. And until world leaders, until any country for that matter that is beset with this challenge, they put in measures in place. It can't just be a talk shop. 16 days is coming up very soon. And what happens after that? Is it just 16 days of saying stop killing women and children? What really needs to happen? Tangible laws, strengthening of messages through the justice system that would be targeted towards perpetrators of gender-based violence. Part of that is going to be part of the solution. It can't just be lip service as what we've been seeing. But yes, the South African government has done. We've seen the Thuthuzela care centres that have been there. The Thuthuzela care centres, we've had challenges of women who would go to a police station and report what has happened to them, and they would not be treated with the necessary sensitivity. But the Thuthuzela care centres, of course, that's where you have privacy. You can relay your ordeal and perhaps find justice, the dignity that comes with it. But then what happens after that? The real tangible solutions need to be found instead of us just calling it a crisis, instead of saying we need to do more. There needs to be something a bit more concrete that needs to come. That's the word that we got from those activists today in totality.
SABC News senior reporter Chriselda Lewis reporting tonight on a very important issue. In fact, there we are, an important issue that we want, or the women of this country, in fact, have said today, they want the leaders who are going to be gathering here at Nasrec over this coming weekend to focus on.